those internally, those who have been displaced from their homes. So humanitarian assistance is a priority.
South Sudan has been ravaged by an ethnic war for the past 5 months that has killed over 1,000 and displaced 1 million people. Hours before the meeting is supposed to begin, a spokesman for the rebels said President Kiir's soldiers have still not laid down their weapons. The meeting comes the day after the United Nations said both sides in the country's brutal civil war likely carried out crimes against humanity. Meanwhile, fierce fighting still rages and the UN has warned of a risk of severe famine and genocide.
So we are taking this opportunity to inform the world that President Salva Kiir is not serious about having a political solution to the conflict. He believes in a military option, and that's why his forces are on offensive everywhere in Greater Upper Nile State.
The United Nations said that crimes against humanity committed by both sides will not go unpunished.
Russians celebrated Victory Parade on Friday, marking the end of the Second World War. The celebrations, presided over by President Vladimir Putin, reminded his people about their patriotic spirit. And a police officer has been killed in Venezuelan capital, Caracas, during clashes between anti-government protesters and riot police. For more on those and other stories, let's turn to this World News Roundup.
Russia held its Victory Day parade on Friday in Moscow, commemorating the end of the Second World War. It was an occasion for President Vladimir Putin to remind the crowd of the Russian patriotic spirit that helped to assure victory. This is a celebration of the invincible power of patriotism. It is a time when all of us feel deep within us what it means to be faithful to the motherland and how important it is to stand for her interests. After the ceremony, President Putin left for Crimea, recently annexed by Moscow. The annexation has provoked the worst crisis between Russia and the West since the Cold War. A police officer was killed on Thursday in the Venezuelan capital Caracas during a raid on an encampment set up by anti-government protesters. In the midst of the fighting, 3 police officers were shot, 1 fatally. More than 240 people were arrested. Since February, protesters have demanded the resignation of President Nicolas Maduro for his failure to rein in inflation and rampant crime. More than 40 people have been killed since the protests began. Some 40,000 university and grade school students marched through the streets of the Chilean capital Santiago on Thursday to pressure President Michelle Bachelet, who assumed office in March, to honor her campaign promises. Since 2011, students have held regular protests to demand reforms to Chile's largely privatized educational system, which they say is unfair. The system was established under the ex-dictator Augusto Pinochet. Italy's former Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi arrived on Friday at the Sacra Famiglia nursing home outside Milan to begin his community service. Convicted of tax fraud, the 77-year-old Mr. Berlusconi was sentenced to 4 hours of community service per week. Along with a 1-year prison sentence, the court also banned Mr. Berlusconi from taking part in politics for 2 years. After he completes 6 months of community service at the home, Mr. Berlusconi's sentence will be reduced by 6 weeks.
Stakeholders in Gambian football have converged for a meeting they say was necessitated by the recent suspension of 4 senior elected officials of the Gambia Football Federation. Babakar Senghor reports majority of the members are unhappy about the development and are calling for a return to normalcy in Gambian football.
Before, the answer is an emphatic yes. The announcement in midweek by the Minister of Youth and Sports of the suspension of the President of the Gambia Football Federation and 3 Vice Presidents has triggered an avalanche of fury among majority of stakeholders in Gambian football. Their very way of expressing their feelings was staged through a hastily convened meeting of members representing football clubs. and affiliate groups from across the country. The mood here is one of disappointment, and more critically a feeling of utter frustration, with members fearing to return to what they refer to as the abysmal 18-month cycle following the dissolution of the previously elected GFA executive.
If there is a problem within or outside the Gambia Football Federation, what the National Sport Council should do is to call all the stakeholders in football, the regions, the clubs, the allied association, to discuss with them and also to seek for their consent what is the way forward.
Others are more forthright in their assessment. Yahya Yabo represents the Interior Football Club, one of the many clubs pushing for a resolution distancing themselves from the decision to suspend the 4 GFF top elected officials.
If we want to move forward and we want to develop Gambian football, there are some individual differences and some grievances we have to drop ahead. At this point in time, what we experienced 2 years ago, if we want to go back to that situation, when are we going to stabilize our football? When are we going to be continuously normalizing? When are we going to stabilize our football? If there is a problem, CAF suspended Gambia for 2 years, and you want to create the bigger problem to be suspended by FIFA, and where we are benefiting a lot from FIFA. Are we looking for our individual interests, or we are trying to look at the interests of the nation?
This is said to be another contentious period in Gambian football, unless some form of compromise is reached.
It is important we sit as key stakeholders here and try to put heads together in order to avert what may be an unfortunate situation for our football. We witnessed the previous speakers talk about the former suspension that led to about 18 months of the normalization process. Actually, there was normalization. That's why when the FIFA performance team came here, they rated the Gambia Football Federation executive and the Gambia Football Federation as one of the best out of 42 countries in Africa. That means there is credit to normalization. And if anything that should come to put us again in such a similar unfortunate situation, this time around, I would not call that normalization, but rather denormalization, which it will be very unfortunate.
With stakeholders contesting a decision they refer to as unconstitutional, and one that they say can only serve to draw Gambian football into another mire. The signs are that we are nowhere near a swift and decisive resolution of the impasse. For Grts Sport, this is Babukar Sengon.
From sports, we now join the Central Focus Office for the day's weather report. apologize for the poor sound quality in that weather report. And before we take leave of you, a quick reminder of the day's top stories. Efforts to roll back malaria in the Gambia are gathering pace as government partnered with the Catholic Relief Service to launch the second distribution campaign of more than 1 million insecticide-treated bed